Men don't lose interest in sex because they're broken. They lose interest because they've awakened. It's not the kind of sentence you'd find on the cover of a men's magazine, but maybe it should be. Because behind closed doors, far away from noise and bravado, many men carry the same silent realization. What I once craved no longer fulfills me. The chase used to feel thrilling. The idea of winning a woman's attention and of earning her body felt like a prize, a proof of manhood. But now, something feels off. The high doesn't last. The aftermath feels hollow, and the hunger somehow keeps returning, emptier each time. What if this isn't dysfunction? What if it's the beginning of awakening? In this video, we'll explore what philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer called nature's greatest illusion, the sexual instinct and the stories we build around it. We'll uncover how desire is wired into our biology, but also how chasing that desire over and over often leaves men feeling used, numb, and spiritually disconnected. More importantly, we'll talk about what lies beyond that illusion, because the journey doesn't end in emptiness. It starts there, and on the other side is something more powerful than lust: clarity, discipline, meaning, and a kind of love that doesn't begin in craving, but in wholeness. So if you've ever wondered, is this all there is? Stay with me. This might be the mirror you've needed, and the map to something more honest, more grounded, and deeply free. We're raised to believe that sex is sacred, that it's a form of love, a celebration of connection, a path to intimacy. But for philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, sex was never about love. It was a biological manipulation. He saw it as nature's greatest scam, a moment of pleasure designed to disguise a deeper agenda: reproduction. In his words, the sexual drive is the ultimate goal of all human effort, not because we consciously want it to be, but because evolution wants us to believe it is. Sex, then, becomes the great bait, and men, wired with testosterone, dopamine, and deep ancestral patterns, become the chasers. Not because they're shallow, but because the system is ancient, efficient, and emotionally blinding. It's not about love, it's about survival. So what happens? A man enters the cycle: craving, pursuit, climax, emptiness, repeat. And he doesn't just give his body to that cycle. He gives his time, his energy, sometimes his money, career, ambition, all for the illusion that sexual access equals fulfillment. He thinks he's winning, but deep down, something doesn't feel right. And eventually, the loop becomes exhausting. What once brought thrill now feels mechanical. What once felt like conquest now tastes like repetition. He begins to question, why do I feel emptier after I get what I wanted? Why does the high disappear faster than before? And that's where the seed of awakening is planted. It's not that sex is evil or wrong. It's that men are sold an illusion, that this act will complete them, give them power, make them whole. But no climax, no body, no fantasy can do that. The awakening begins when a man sees this, when he looks at the loop and says, I've been trading my energy for an illusion, and I want something real. Not to escape desire, but to rise above it, to stop being chased by hunger, and start living with clarity. At first, desire feels like life. It electrifies you. It pulls you into action. It makes you feel hungry, alive, needed, powerful. But there's a hidden paradox. Too little sex, and a man feels starved. Too much, and he begins to feel nothing at all. What once burned like a fire now feels like a flicker. What once pulled him forward now makes him numb. And maybe no one warned him about that part. This is the quiet descent from desire into apathy. It doesn't happen overnight. It's slow, like erosion. The thrill fades a little more each time. The body still functions. The habits are still there. But the soul, it no longer shows up. And that's what hurts most. Because this isn't just boredom. It's a kind of mourning, a grieving for the meaning that was promised, but never delivered. Each sexual experience begins to feel like a rerun of the same old script. The same patterns, the same roles. He knows the ending before the story starts. And slowly, he starts to withdraw. Not out of fear, but fatigue. He's tired of pretending that climax equals connection. Tired of chasing what leaves him lonelier afterward. Schopenhauer warned of this long ago. He wrote, "Love is the ultimate delusion by which nature dupes the individual into serving the species." In other words, the more we chase love, or what we think is love, the more we serve biology, not our own soul. And when that curtain falls, what's left? A quiet man, a questioning man, a man wondering if love was ever real, or if he was simply used by something deeper, older, and blind. This is the part where many men give up. They turn to distraction, porn, hookups, endless scrolling. Or worse, they stop feeling altogether. But some, just a few, allow this emptiness to become a doorway. They stop running. They let the numbness speak. And instead of escaping it, they ask, what's really missing? What was I actually looking for all along? That's where the healing begins. Not with more pleasure, but with honest silence. And from that silence, something new can finally emerge. If this content is making sense to you, please click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. When desire fades, what's left? For many men, the answer is silence. A strange, unsettling quiet. Not just around them, but inside them. They've chased, conquered, tasted, and exhausted. And now they look around and wonder, what now? This is not depression. It's not despair. It's something more subtle. And in some ways, more dangerous. Emptiness. Not the kind you feel when you're lonely, but the kind that creeps in when everything you thought would fulfill you doesn't. He goes to the gym. He builds a business. He reads about discipline and success. But somewhere between the reps, the wins, the goals, there's a hollow space that refuses to be filled. And here's the twist. This man isn't weak. He's not lazy or broken. He's simply reached the backstage of life. The moment when the performance ends, the crowd disappears and the spotlight turns off. And in the silence that follows, he sees it. He wasn't performing for himself. He was performing for validation, attention, instinct, society, everything but his own soul. Schopenhauer understood this moment. He said that the deepest suffering in life isn't pain, it's boredom. Not because there's nothing to do, but because there's nothing left that feels real. And this is where the loop threatens to begin again. Many men, unable to sit in the void, return to what they know: porn, hookups, toxic relationships, anything to feel something, anything but emptiness. But others choose something harder. They stay. They resist the urge to escape. They hold the silence. They let the discomfort open a deeper question. If everything I chased was an illusion, what does something real even look like? That moment, when a man dares to stay with the silence instead of fleeing it, is the turning point. He's no longer running from emptiness. He's entering it. And inside that void, a new kind of power waits. Not the power to conquer others, but the power to rebuild from the inside out. There's something sacred about the void, but only if you have the courage to stay in it. Most men run, a few remain, and those few begin to feel something stir. It's subtle at first, a flicker beneath the numbness, a quiet question rising from the silence. If I am no longer chasing desire, what do I do with all this energy? And that's the moment of alchemy. Because the truth is, your sexual energy was never the enemy. It was raw, wild power, misused, misguided, but not wrong. Carl Jung called this sublimation, the process of transforming primal energy into creative force. It's what happens when a man stops spilling his essence outward and begins to build something inward. Instead of chasing women, he starts chasing mastery. Instead of performing for attention, he shows up in silence, in focus, in fire. He pours that same hunger into building a business, writing music, training the body, raising a family, or walking a spiritual path with depth. He no longer needs to be seen. He becomes someone worth seeing, without trying. Because he's no longer addicted to validation. He's rooted in clarity. He doesn't suppress his drive. He redirects it. And in that redirection, a new kind of strength is born. Not the loud strength of conquest, but the quiet, grounded power of creation. He becomes a builder, a sculptor, an architect of systems, of values, of inner integrity. This is the man who doesn't need sex to feel alive. But if he has it, it's no longer an escape. It's a choice, a sacred expression, a conscious act. And here's the beauty. People begin to feel it, not because he's trying to impress, but because he radiates something rare, a man who is whole within himself. That's the beginning of sacred masculinity, where power isn't dominance, it's presence, where desire isn't chased, it's channeled. And for the first time, his life doesn't revolve around hunger, it revolves around meaning. When a man begins to rise from the void, something remarkable happens. He no longer searches for love as a way to feel complete, because for the first time, he is complete. Not perfect, not finished, but whole enough to stop looking for someone to fix his emptiness. This is where love begins to change shape. Not the kind of love that burns fast and fades, not the intoxication of hormones and fantasy, but a quieter, deeper love, born not from hunger, but from presence. When he meets someone now, it's no longer about possession. It's not about filling a gap or proving his worth. It's about sharing something real, from the overflow, not the void. And because of that, the way he relates shifts entirely. He no longer falls for someone because they make him feel alive. He's already alive. Instead, he's drawn to truth, depth, alignment, to a connection where both people bring wholeness rather than seek to borrow it. This is the love that isn't desperate. It doesn't cling. It breathes. It respects space. It honors boundaries. It knows that intimacy isn't about merging into one, but about standing side by side, fully seen, fully sovereign. And yes, sex still exists here, but it too has changed. It's no longer a transaction, no longer a way to escape boredom or prove value. It becomes sacred again, not because it's rare, but because it's real. In this redefined love, sex returns to what it was always meant to be, not conquest, not validation, but union, conscious, embodied, awake. And this man, the one who used to chase the illusion, now walks with a different kind of magnetism. He doesn't need love to feel whole, and that's exactly why love can find him. Because love, in its truest form, comes when we stop using it, when we stop demanding it heal us, save us, complete us. It comes when we're ready to offer something real, not our fantasies, but our presence. That's the shift. Not from lonely to in love, but from fragmented to whole. Schopenhauer called sex the invisible chain, not because it's bad, but because it tricks you into thinking you're free. It whispers, you're a man. You're supposed to want this. Chase it. Earn it. Prove yourself through it. And before you realize it, you're not choosing. You're obeying. But here's the truth few are willing to say out loud. In modern culture, sex isn't just a desire. It's a weapon, used to sell, to manipulate, to distract. Every scroll on your phone, every ad, every clickbait headline, every Instagram curve, designed to hijack your attention, your biology, your sense of worth. And the more you follow the impulse, the more you lose yourself. You don't realize it's a system, a loop built to keep you hungry, because a hungry man is easy to sell to, easy to use, easy to control. Schopenhauer saw this trap through a philosophical lens. Carl Jung went deeper. He called it the tyranny of the unconscious. When you're ruled by your lower impulses, especially sexual ones, you're not living as a whole person. You're living as a fragment, as a puppet of instincts you don't even question. And individuation, the Jungian path to inner wholeness, begins with this. You must reclaim your desire from the unconscious. That doesn't mean repressing it. It means taking it back, looking it in the eye, understanding it, and then choosing what to do with it. Not from compulsion, but from clarity. This is where real freedom begins. When you stop being led by craving and start living by intention. When you stop outsourcing your energy to algorithms, porn, or toxic relationships and start investing it into systems, habits, values, vision. The irony? The man who breaks free from the sexual trap becomes more attractive than ever. Not because he's trying, but because he's rooted. He moves through the world with a different frequency. Unbothered, clear, unchained, and people feel it. Because freedom, real inner freedom, can't be faked. It radiates. At the end of the illusion, at the bottom of the void, after the craving fades and the silence settles, something new begins to form. Not louder, not harder, but quieter, deeper, wiser. This is the birth of the sacred masculine. A man who is no longer ruled by instinct, but no longer ashamed of it either. He doesn't suppress desire. He integrates it. He no longer needs sex to feel worthy. He doesn't chase love to feel alive. He's already both. Worthy and alive, with or without anyone else. This man doesn't posture. He doesn't need to dominate, impress, seduce, or perform, because his power is not performative. It's energetic, grounded, undeniable. He moves slower, speaks less, but when he looks, it's real. When he touches, it's sacred. This is not weakness. It's the kind of strength that doesn't make noise, because it doesn't need to. He's left behind the fantasy that love will save him, that sex will complete him, that pleasure is destiny. And in that letting go, he finds something better, truth. A truth that doesn't need to be exciting. It just needs to be lived. Quietly, fully, without drama. He builds his life from this place, not to prove, but to create. Not to seduce, but to serve. Not to escape, but to embody. And ironically, it's here, in this grounded, calm presence, that love returns. But this time, it's not the chaotic kind. It's not a whirlwind. It's not fire needing to be fed. It's more like a steady flame, warm, clear, consistent. And if he chooses to love, to partner, to share his world, it's not because he needs to. It's because he wants to. From choice, not compulsion. From fullness, not hunger. That's the sacred masculine. Not a role, not a trend, a reality, a return. And Schopenhauer, for all his harshness, never promised comfort, but he did offer truth. And truth, when finally embraced, doesn't hurt. It sets you free. So in the end, men don't lose interest in sex because they're broken. They lose interest because they've seen through the illusion. They've felt the high. They've tasted the repetition. They've faced the silence afterward. And instead of running from the emptiness, they walked through it. From desire to numbness, from performance to stillness, From illusion to something real. This isn't about rejecting sex. It's about no longer worshipping it, no longer letting it define manhood, self-worth, or purpose. Because sex isn't the enemy. It's the idolization of sex that became the chain. And the man who sees through that chain, he's not bitter, he's not weak, he's free. Free to love if he chooses. Free to walk alone if he must. Free to build, to serve, to create. Not from hunger, but from clarity. Maybe you felt echoes of this journey in your own life. Maybe you're in the middle of it right now. Wherever you are, know this. The discomfort you feel isn't failure. It's the beginning of freedom. So breathe. Return to your center. And remember, you don't have to prove your worth to the world. You only have to live it. Fully, honestly, quietly. The illusion is fading, and something real is waiting to take its place. If this message stirred something in you, don't rush to forget it. Pause. Reflect. Maybe rewatch. Maybe share. Or simply sit in silence and ask yourself, what part of me is ready to be free? Freedom isn't loud. It's deliberate. And sometimes, the smallest shift in how you see, feel, or choose is the beginning of everything. Start there.